who's in charge of policy and those policy making policy decisions for
Mm.
people, or that they don't have a depth of understanding because they haven't um, sought to hear the voices or heard the problems, so they try and fix the problems without understanding the problems, if that makes sense. um,
Yeah, and I think um, what's often easiest for policymakers is to see a statistic and use that as the basis for decision making. It's they've become these shorthands for the story, when actually the story behind that number may be incredibly varied, nuanced, and you have to unpick who is represented in that number. And that's why I think balancing the quantitative with qualitative research is so important, and getting that work published in academic journals, that are the places that these policymakers feel they can go for reliable data on which to base their choices. And so, whilst I'm not saying that quantitative research is bad, it's absolutely not, and there is a place in this for quantitative research, but we don't have enough qualitative research to sit alongside that to really be able to fully understand what's going on. I mean, an example for me, my background has been in marketing. As marketers, we look at our dashboards, we look at our data, we look at the analytics on the screen, and you see all, the numbers go up, the numbers go down. What that doesn't tell you is why that person chose your product on a particular day in their life, when they're doing something that you can't know about unless you ask them. And if you ask them and hear their story, you start to understand the real motivation behind that purchase. And I see this as the same thing. The number just gives you a clue as to where you might want to take your question.
Now, something you just said about publishing in places that policymakers find reliable to go to,
Mm.
those places, in my experience and understanding, are often gated. So that means you have to pay some ginormous subscription, and
Yeah.
then open access publishing then isn't as well regarded, but then humanity's got the access to that research.
Yeah.
And yet policymakers, it's like paying the more expensive price, perceived value.
Indeed. Yeah, and it is one of those challenges in academic research and publishing. Certainly, um, as researchers, most researchers want their research to reach as many people as possible, and they also want it to reach the people who have enough power to make decisions as part of that group. And certainly, what I'm seeing in the sector is more encouragement from within universities for and more support for academics to publish in open access publications. So I see that is something that is shifting. But you are right that there is also a set of publishers who put some work behind paywalls that make them really hard for the public outside of academic institutions to access. Um, and I think the more that we can do to encourage more open access availability, but also to consider the those publications and those routes that are maybe behind those paywalls, find ways in which the messages from those can be shared more widely. And even if there isn't, not everybody's able to access everything and the full detail, the messages can still be shared publicly through engagement with the public, researchers going out there and sharing their findings. So that's something that I'm really keen to do. I think there are lots of people out there who are doing amazing work in talking about this topic and advocating, telling those stories in the wider world.